Think you're tough, huh?
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Look at her. Still standing there. What are you gonna do, huh? Are you gonna cry now?
When a cruel act of racism shakes a small town, a noose, hung in front of a black girl's locker, silence and complicity rise higher than justice. As her principal buries her complaints and classmates turn traitorous, leaving her to face isolation, humiliation, and betrayal. But when her father, a decorated Navy SEAL commander, learns the truth, the battle for justice erupts, exposing systemic racism in the school, a corrupt blue wall of educators protecting each other, and the crushing weight of institutional silence, from classrooms where betrayal cuts deepest to boardrooms where exposure sparks chaos. Father and daughter stand unbroken, forcing the truth into the open. As lies collapse, careers burn, and hidden chains are shattered, what began as one act of hatred becomes the story of resistance, courage, and poetic justice, where the noose meant for fear becomes the rope that pulls the oppressors down. The hallways smelled of bleach and sweat, the daily cocktail of a public high school. Lockers slammed, sneakers squeaked, and laughter echoed like knives scraping metal. But Maya Carter froze. A noose dangled from her locker handle. Not a shoelace, not a rope from gym class. A noose tied perfectly, cruelly, her throat closed. "Oh damn, look at that," a boy's voice snickered from behind. "Guess someone's sending a message," another said, followed by muffled laughter. Maya's fingers trembled as she reached toward the rope, then pulled back as though it burned. The hallway tilted, students pressing in with eyes that cut sharper than words. Some stared in silence, others smirked, a few whispered. Nobody stopped it, nobody helped. Her breath came shallow. "Maya, just walk away," a girl muttered softly beside her. "Don't make it worse, worse." How could it be worse? Her eyes darted toward the teachers at the end of the hall. Two of them turned deliberately away, pretending not to notice, pretending it was nothing, pretending she was nothing. "Yo, Maya," a boy called mockingly. "They left you a necklace." Laughter exploded. Her stomach twisted. She clenched her jaw and yanked the noose off the locker. The coarse rope scraped her palm. She wanted to scream, to smash it into their faces. Instead, she shoved it into her backpack like a piece of evidence. The bell rang. The hallway thinned. The laughter lingered. The principal's office smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner. Principal Hughes leaned back in his chair, adjusting his tie with wary detachment. "Maya," he said, voice heavy with forced patience, "we take these things seriously. But are you sure it wasn't just a prank?" Maya's eyes widened. "A prank? They hung a noose on my locker." "Yes, but kids these days, they watch things online. They imitate without understanding the history. I don't want you to overreact." Her hands curled into fists. "Overreact. Someone wanted me to feel unsafe, and it worked." Hughes sighed. "We'll talk to a few students, but you need to keep this in perspective. Drawing too much attention might damage your reputation." Maya blinked, stunned. "My reputation? I'm the victim." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I don't want to see you make this bigger than it is." The rope in her backpack felt heavier with every second. She left the office hollow. Her anger pressed into silence. At home, the silence didn't last. The kitchen smelled of garlic and fried onions. Her father, Commander David Carter, sat at the table in his dark navy t-shirt, forearms resting like stone pillars. His eyes, sharp as steel, studied her face before she even spoke. Maya placed the rope on the table. The room went still. David didn't move. His jaw tightened, veins standing at his temple. He stared at the noose as if it were a live weapon. His voice was low, measured. Maya's lip trembled. "Kids at school, I don't know who." He didn't blink, didn't breathe. His hands, scarred from combat, curled into fists on the table. Silence stretched. "Finally," he said, "you're not alone. Not in this house. Not in this fight." Tears burned her eyes. "But Dad," the principal said not to overreact. His eyes flashed like a storm. "Overreact? They hung a noose in front of my daughter. That is not a prank. That is terror." The words cut through the kitchen like a blade. David rose slowly, the weight of a man who had fought enemies overseas, now facing a new battlefield at home. "They wanted to scare you," he said, voice steady but fierce. "Instead, they just woke up the wrong man." The IV the next morning, David walked beside Maya into the school. His presence filled the hallways like a shadow stretching across the floor. Students turned to look. Some whispered, others stiffened. Maya held her books close, her face unreadable, but her father's posture told another story. His spine was straight, his steps precise. His gaze locked forward. They entered the principal's office. Principal Hughes stood quickly, surprise flickering across his face. "Commander Carter," he said, forcing a smile. "I wasn't expecting." David's voice was sharp, clipped, military. "We need to talk. Now." The secretary glanced nervously at Hughes. He nodded, and the door closed. Inside the office, the tension settled like dust before a storm. David placed the rope on Hughes's desk. "This," David said, his voice even, "was tied to my daughter's locker. Explain to me why you called it a prank." Hughes cleared his throat, tugging at his collar. "Commander, I assure you, we don't tolerate bullying, but sometimes kids don't understand the history behind their actions." David's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me teenagers in America don't understand the history of a noose?" Silence. Maya sat stiff in her chair, her eyes shifting between them. Hughes finally spoke, voice cautious. "We don't want to escalate matters unnecessarily. Bringing law enforcement or the media into this could divide the community." David leaned forward, his tone dropping like a hammer. "A noose is not a community prank. It is a threat, a symbol of lynching. My daughter was targeted because of her race, and you're worried about division." Hughes flinched, but kept his mask of calm. "We have to protect the school's reputation. If this gets out, it could cause panic. Parents will demand answers we may not have." Maya finally spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "So you're protecting the school, not me." The words cut deeper than David's. Hughes opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Maya, I want you to feel safe here, truly. But sometimes, ignoring provocations is the best way to." David slammed his hand flat on the desk. The sound echoed. "Ignoring threats doesn't make them disappear. It emboldens cowards." The principal swallowed hard. His smile faded, replaced by a bureaucratic mask. "Review the cameras, but I can't promise much. These things often happen in blind spots." David's voice was cold. "Then you need fewer blind spots." In the hallway afterward, Maya whispered, "Dad, you're scaring them." He didn't look at her. "Good." She stopped walking. "But it won't change anything. They'll just bury it." He turned to face her, his jaw tight. "Maya, do you think I spent 20 years defending this country to come home and let them hang a rope on my daughter's locker? No, this isn't over." Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the silence of the school felt heavier than the rope itself. That afternoon, in the teacher's lounge, voices whispered over coffee cups. "Did you hear about Maya Carter?" "Yes, but Hughes says it's under control." "Under control. It's a noose. You want to be the one to explain that to the parents, to the board, the sheriff." "I just don't want to get dragged into it." Their silence was safer than their courage. Back home, Maya sat at the kitchen table with her homework untouched. "Do you think he's right?" she asked quietly. "Who?" David asked, still standing in the doorway, arms folded. "The principal." "That I should ignore it." David stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. "You ignore cowards, not threats. This isn't about ignoring, it's about standing." Maya bit her lip. "But everyone stares at me now, like I'm the problem, like I'm the reason there's tension." He knelt beside her, placing a scarred hand over hers. "That's what silence does. It turns the victim into the villain. Don't carry their shame, Maya. It's not yours." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Then why does it feel like it is?" His voice softened. "Because they want it too. But you're stronger than their lies." She nodded, but her shoulders remained heavy. That night, David sat alone in the living room. The noose coiled on the coffee table in front of him. The rope seemed to breathe in the dim light, a snake curled in waiting. His phone buzzed. A fellow Navy SEAL, old comrade. He ignored it. His war wasn't overseas anymore. His war had come home, and this time, it wore the face of silence. Rope sat between them, no longer just a weapon of fear, but a signal of war. The sheriff's department sat on the edge of town, its brick walls faded by years of sun. A flag flapped lazily in the wind. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as David walked in with Maya at his side. His steps were deliberate, his jaw locked. Deputy Collins, leaning against the front desk, raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" David's voice was steady. "I'm here to file a hate crime report. Someone left a noose on my daughter's locker." Collins chuckled, shaking his head. That's heavy language, Commander. You sure it wasn't just some kids messing around? David's eyes cut sharp. Does a noose sound like kids messing around to you? The deputy smirked. Depends on the kid. Teenagers do stupid things. Maya shifted uneasily, her hands clutching her backpack straps. It wasn't stupid, she said quietly. It was meant to scare me. Collins looked at her for the first time, his smirk fading into something colder. You got proof of that? David leaned closer, his voice like steel. The proof is hanging in the evidence bag I brought, and the traumas in my daughter's eyes. That's enough. Collins leaned back, folding his arms. Sheriff will decide what's enough. Sit tight. The sheriff's office smelled faintly of tobacco when Sheriff Whitaker finally called them in. His hair was thinning, his stomach pressing against his belt, but his eyes carried the authority of a man too long in power. He gestured to the chairs. Commander Carter, Maya, have a seat. They sat. Whitaker spoke slowly, as though calming children. Now, I've heard about the situation. Disturbing, yes. But let's not jump to conclusions. We can't be calling everything a hate crime. It stirs up tension. David's voice was low. This was a noose. There is no other conclusion. Whitaker raised a hand. I understand your concern, but teenagers act out. Sometimes they imitate what they see online. Doesn't always mean intent. Maya's voice cracked. How is a noose not intent? How is that not hate? Whitaker's expression hardened. Young lady, calm yourself. We'll handle this, but exaggerating won't help you. David's fist tightened against his knee. With respect, Sheriff, minimizing an act of terror won't help either. Whitaker leaned back, his eyes narrowing. Careful, Commander. You may be used to barking orders in uniform, but this is my jurisdiction. The silence grew sharp. David finally stood. Then do your job. Back in the car. Maya stared out the window, her voice barely a whisper. They don't care, Dad. They'll never care. David gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale. They care about protecting their own. That's the blue wall. Maya frowned. Blue wall. He exhaled, staring at the road ahead. Cops cover for cops. Officials cover for officials. They'll bury the truth if it threatens their reputation. I've seen it before. She bit her lip. Then what happens to me? His voice hardened. You survive. Until I tear that wall down. The next day at school, the whispers grew louder. She probably made it up. Her dad's just trying to get the attention. Nobody actually saw it. Maya clenched her books tighter, walking faster through the halls. Each word was a shove, each stare a cut dot at lunch. 3 boys cornered her near the vending machines. One leaned close, smirking. Hey, heard the sheriff thinks you're lying. You hang that rope yourself. Her chest tightened. Get out of my way. Another boy snorted. Relax, we're just asking. I mean, why would anyone waste time on you? Laughter. Maya shoved past them, her face burning, but their words followed like smoke. That evening, David sat at the dining table, scrolling through his laptop. He had pulled up the school district's budget reports, contracts with the sheriff's office, and the names of board members. His military training sharpened his focus. He was hunting. Maya sat across from him, homework untouched. Dad, what if they never believe me? He looked up, his eyes steady. Then we show them so much truth they can't look away. She shook her head. But it's just us against all of them. He leaned forward. That's what they want you to think. But walls crack. Silence breaks. They can't hold it forever. She wanted to believe him. She needed to. Late that night, the sheriff sat in his office, Collins leaning against the doorframe. What do we do about Carter? Collins asked. Whitaker rubbed his temples. We do nothing. No report, no press. Let it die. He'll get the message. Collins smirked. And if he doesn't? Whitaker's eyes narrowed. Then we make him. The blue wall stood firm, but cracks had already begun to form. The morning sun spilled through the classroom windows, painting long stripes across the floor. Maya slid into her seat, trying to make herself small. Whispers trailed her. That's her, the noose. Girl, drama queen. She fixed her eyes on the frontboard, ignoring the sting. Mr. Reynolds, her English teacher, stood at the podium. Normally, his voice carried warmth. He was the one who encouraged her writing, told her she had talent. Today, though, he cleared his throat too long before speaking. Class, he said. Before we begin, I want to remind you that our school is a place of learning. Outside distractions should not disrupt our environment. Maya's chest tightened. She knew what he meant. A boy in the back muttered loud enough to hear. Guess that's for some people more than others. Snickers rippled across the room. Maya's jaw clenched. She raised her hand. Mr. Reynolds. He paused. Yes, Maya. Her voice trembled but carried strength. A noose was hung on my locker. That's not a distraction. That's a threat. The room stilled. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. I understand your feelings, Maya, but sometimes the best response is not to give power to cruel gestures. Her eyes widened. Ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. His voice softened, almost pleading. You're a bright young woman. Don't let anger define you. Keep your head down. Focus on your future. The words struck harder than laughter in the hallway. So if someone threatens me with a symbol of lynching, she said slowly, your advice is to keep my head down. A heavy silence filled the room. Students looked from her to him, waiting. Reynolds adjusted his glasses, his face pale. I'm saying peace is stronger than confrontation. Maya's voice cracked, but she didn't back down. Peace without justice isn't peace, it's silence. The tension thickened until one boy snorted. She's just looking for attention. Maya turned on him. Attention. You think I asked for this? Laughter scattered like stones. Reynolds slammed his hand on the desk. Enough. This conversation ends here. Maya, please sit quietly. Her chest heaved. For the first time, she saw him not as a mentor, but as part of the silence suffocating her. She whispered, more to herself than anyone. I thought you'd understand. The bell rang. Students spilled into the hall, buzzing with gossip. One girl leaned close as she passed. Maya should have kept quiet. Now you made him mad too. Maya blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. At lunch, she sat alone, her tray untouched. Her friend Lila hesitated before sitting across from her. Maya, maybe he just didn't know what to say. Maya stared at her. He's a teacher. Words are his job. Lila bit her lip. I know, but if he sides with you, he risks his own job. This town doesn't like trouble. Maya's throat burned. So I'm the trouble. Silence hung heavy between them. That evening at home, Maya sat at the table, her books closed. David entered, dropping his keys on the counter. He studied her face. Rough day. She nodded, her voice hollow. Mr. Reynolds told me to keep my head down, to ignore it. David's jaw tightened. Coward. Her voice broke. He was the one teacher I trusted, and even he. She trailed off, her chest heaving. David sat across from her, his eyes sharp but tender. Maya, betrayal hurts worse than hate, but it also shows you who people really are. She wiped her eyes. Then who do I have? His hand reached across the table. Steady. Me. Always me. And yourself. Don't forget your own strength. Her breath shook, but she nodded. Later that night, Maya sat on her bed, notebook open. She wrote furiously, words pouring like fire. They tell me to keep quiet, but silence is their comfort, not mine. My voice is the only weapon I have, and I won't let them take it. The ink stained her fingers. Her resolve hardened. The betrayal still cut deep, but from its wound. Defiance began to grow. The night was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. The kitchen light cast a pale glow across the room, where Maya sat with her knees tucked under her chin. David walked in, a mug of coffee in hand. He didn't speak right away. He just sat across from her, the silence stretching long. Finally, Maya whispered, I don't understand why they hate me. I never did anything to them. David set the mug down slowly. His eyes were heavy, shadowed by memories. You don't have to do anything, Maya, sometimes. The color of your skin is all it takes. She looked at him, searching his face. Did it ever happen to you? In the Navy. His jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked away. Then he nodded. My first deployment, he began, voice steady but low. I was 21, young, hungry, to prove myself. I outshot half the men during training, outran most of them too. But no matter what I did, there were whispers, jokes. The word they used for me wasn't soldier. It was, he paused. Maya saw his throat work as he swallowed. It was boy. Her stomach sank. Did you report them? David gave a humorless laugh. Report them. To who? The same officers who laughed along. The same ones who told me I should be grateful to wear the uniform. No, Maya. You learn quick. The system doesn't punish itself. Maya's fists clenched around her knees. So what did you do? He leaned forward, his eyes sharp with the memory. I fought harder. I rose higher. I let their hate sharpen me, but it left scars. He rolled up his sleeve, tapping a faint white line near his forearm. This one, training accident, they called it, but I know what it was. One of them cut my rope during a climb. Said later he thought I could handle it. I nearly broke my back. Maya's breath caught, and nothing happened to him. David shook his head. They said there wasn't enough evidence, just like they'll say about your noose. The words sank into her chest like stones. Then what's the point, Dad? If nothing changes, he reached across the table, his hand steady on hers. The point is you. The point is us. The point is every step forward, every voice that refuses to be silent. Change is slow, but silence makes it slower. Tears blurred her eyes. I'm tired of being strong. His voice softened. So was I, but strength isn't about not breaking. Maya, it's about standing back up when they want you to stay down. They sat in silence for a moment. The clock ticked. Finally, Maya asked, did anyone ever stand up for you? David's gaze drifted, remembering. Once, a brother in arms. He wasn't black. He wasn't like me, but he refused to let them push me out. Said if they wanted me gone, they'd have to take him to. That man saved my career. Sometimes, you'll find allies in the places you least expect. Sometimes, you'll be your own. Maya swallowed hard, nodding slowly. Then maybe I'll write about it. Maybe that's how I fight back. David's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then write. Make them hear you. Words are weapons too. Later, in her room, Maya opened her notebook again. This time her pen didn't shake. She wrote her father's story alongside her own. She wrote about the noose, about the silence, about the weight of betrayal. And for the first time, her pain felt less like a wound and more like a blade, sharp, steady, and hers to wield. David stood in the doorway, watching her write. Pride and sorrow mixed in his chest. He thought of his own battles, the ones he fought alone, and he swore to himself that his daughter would never fight hers alone. The war he carried for decades had passed to her, but together, they would fight it. The cafeteria buzzed with noise, trays clattering, voices overlapping, laughter echoing off tile walls. Maya sat at the edge of a table, alone, her fork tracing circles in mashed potatoes she had no appetite for. She felt the stairs before. She saw them. 3 boys swaggered up, trays in hand, the same ones who whispered in the hallway days earlier. One leaned over, his voice dripping with mockery. Hey, rope girl, miss us. Maya's chest tightened. Leave me alone. Another boy grinned, leaning closer. Why? We're just trying to have a little fun. You like attention, don't you? Students nearby went quiet, pretending to eat, pretending not to hear. Silence spread like oil across water. The third boy flicked his fingers, knocking her juice cup over. It spilled across the table, soaking her notebook. Maya shot up, her chair screeching. Stop it. The first boy smirked. Or what? You gonna call Daddy? Laughter followed, her fists clenched. The rage swelled. You think this is funny? You think hanging a noose on someone's locker makes you a man? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Teachers at the far end glanced over, and then quickly looked away. The boy's grin faltered, replaced with something sharper, meaner. Careful, Maya. People might think you're dangerous. Moments later, she was in the principal's office again. Principal Hughes sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Maya, this is the second time you've been involved in a confrontation. Her eyes widened. Involved. They cornered me. They spilled my drink. He raised a hand. Regardless of who started it, shouting in the cafeteria disrupted the entire lunch period. We can't have outbursts. Her voice cracked. So I'm the problem, not the boys harassing me. His tone was smooth, rehearsed. Both sides need to be held accountable. That's fairness. Maya's chest heaved. Fairness. You call this fairness? That evening, David sat at the table with the referral slip in hand. His eyes scanned the words, disruptive behavior and verbal outburst. His jaw clenched, so tight it looked carved from stone. They punished you. His voice was low. Dangerous. Maya nodded, her lip trembling. They said I shouted, that I caused a scene. David's fist slammed the table. The mug rattled. They want you silent. That's the scene they want. P rose, pacing the room. Enough. I'm done playing by their rules. Maya blinked. What are you going to do? David exhaled, steadying himself. What I should have done from the start. Gather proof. The next morning, David requested access to the cafeteria cameras. Hughes stalled. We're still reviewing footage, he said, avoiding David's eyes. David leaned in, his voice low but sharp. Then I'll wait, right here. Hours passed. At last, Hughes produced a USB file, reluctantly. That night, David sat at his laptop. He watched the footage frame by frame, Maya sitting quietly, the boys surrounding her, the juice spilled, the taunts, her standing, shouting back. It was all there. Clear, undeniable. His hands tightened on the edge of the table. They buried this. Maya leaned over his shoulder, her eyes wide. They knew. He nodded grimly, and they hoped we wouldn't fight back. The next day, David confronted Hughes with the footage. Explain to me why this wasn't in your report. Hughes shifted uncomfortably. Didn't want to escalate matters. David's voice thundered. Escalate. You punished my daughter while protecting her attackers. That isn't discipline. That's complicity. Hughes lowered his voice, nervous glances darting to the open door. Commander, please, if this gets out, the board will. David's eyes burned. Good. Let it get out. That night, Maya sat at the table, her notebook open again. Her words came fast, sharp. They called my voice disruption, but silence is their order. If fairness means punishing the victim, then fairness is broken. David watched her write, pride swelling through his fury. But beneath it all, a decision hardened in him like steel. If the school wanted silence, they would get the opposite. If they wanted the truth buried, he would dig it up for the world to see. The rope had started this war. The cover-up had escalated it, and now, David Carter was done playing defense. The local news station ran the story quietly at first, a late evening segment, buried between weather updates and a traffic accident. But the footage spoke louder than headlines ever could. On screen, the grainy cafeteria video showed Maya sitting alone, 3 boys closing in, juice spilled, her standing, shouting. No voiceover could soften what the camera revealed. By morning, the clip was everywhere. Social media lit up, hashtags climbing, hashtag justice. The noose in the hall. At the breakfast table, Maya scrolled her phone, stunned. It's everywhere. People are sharing it, even celebrities. David leaned back, arms crossed. His voice was steady, measured. Good. The truth belongs to everyone now. But beneath the calm, his jaw tightened. He knew exposure came with cost. At school, whispers chased Maya down every hall. Some students avoided her gaze. Others stared too long. A few offered soft words. A girl from chemistry class approached timidly. Maya, I saw the video. I'm sorry I never said anything before. Maya's throat tightened. You don't have to be sorry. Just don't be silent next time. The girl nodded, shame in her eyes. But for every whisper of support, there were mutters of resentment. She's making us look bad. Now the whole world thinks our school is racist. One boy sneered as she passed. Hope you're happy. You just ruined our town's reputation. Maya bit her lip, refusing to break stride. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Hughes stared at his ringing phone. Local reporters, parent committees, board members. He picked up one call, reluctantly. Principal Hughes speaking. A voice crackled through the line. We saw the footage. You had this and still punished the girl. Do you realize the liability? Hughes swallowed hard. We were attempting to handle it internally. The caller snapped. You buried the evidence. The public won't forgive that. That evening, David was invited onto a live broadcast. The anchor leaned forward, eyes sharp. Commander Carter, why did you release this footage? David met the camera directly. Because silence protects the abuser, and the school chose silence. My daughter was punished for standing up to harassment while her attackers walked free. That isn't discipline. That's complicity. The anchor's voice softened. Some argue you've blown this out of proportion, that children make mistakes. David's eyes didn't waver. Children make mistakes. Institutions cover them up. And when institutions protect bullies over victims, they teach cruelty as policy. The studio went silent. Viewers at home felt the weight of his words. The fallout spread fast. The school board called an emergency meeting. Parents filled the gymnasium. Voices raised in anger. A mother shouted from the crowd, "If that was your daughter, would you call it a mistake?" Another parent snapped back, "This is tearing the community apart." A father stood, trembling with rage. "It's been apart. You just refused to see it." Maya sat in the back of the gym, heart pounding. Watching grown adults argue over her existence felt surreal, like she was both invisible and too visible at once. David squeezed her hand. "They're arguing because you made them see." "That's power," Maya whispered. "It doesn't feel like power. It feels like being on trial." He turned to her, voice low. "That's what truth feels like at first. But remember, you're not the one on trial. They are." The meeting ended in chaos. No resolution reached. That night, news trucks lined the street outside their home. Reporters called out as David carried groceries inside. Commander Carter, do you believe the principal should resign? Maya, do you feel safe at school? Maya ducked her head, overwhelmed. David raised a hand, no comment. But once inside, he turned to her. Tomorrow, we decide how far we want to take this. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Do we even have a choice anymore? He exhaled slowly. No, not really. Days blurred. The superintendent announced a formal investigation. The 3 boys were quietly suspended, though no one said for how long. Hughes issued a statement full of polished words. Our school values equity. We regret any missteps. But the internet didn't forgive. Screenshots of Maya's referral slip circulated, captioned with outrage. Calls for Hughes to resign grew louder. One evening, Maya sat at her desk, pen scratching furiously in her notebook. Exposure is a double-edged blade. It cuts the liar and the truth-teller alike. But silence is a noose. It chokes until you can't breathe. I choose the blade. David watched from the doorway, quiet pride in his eyes. He knew the war was only beginning. Exposure was light, and light revealed everything, good and bad. The school could no longer hide. The boys could no longer pretend. Hughes could no longer bury the truth. And the town itself, split open, had to look at the rope it had tried so hard to ignore. The sky hung heavy with gray clouds the morning after the board meeting. The air in town felt brittle, like something waiting to shatter. Maya walked into school with her backpack slung low. Conversations hushed when she passed. Some eyes glared, others slid away in guilt. A boy muttered as she brushed by, "Snitch." Another whispered louder, "Attention, seeker." She kept walking, but the words clung like smoke. In history class, the teacher cleared his throat, shuffling papers. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone, let's stay respectful during this difficult time. Maya raised her hand, voice steady but trembling beneath. So, respectful like ignoring nooses, or respectful like punishing me for shouting back. The room froze, the teacher's face reddened. Maya, that's enough. She pressed on. No, it's not enough. That's the problem. Silence followed. Finally, the teacher slammed the textbook shut. Office. Now. Principal Hughes waited with arms folded. His voice was calm, polished, but his eyes burned. Maya, you're disrupting classrooms now. Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. You're disrupting my life. You're teaching everyone that silence matters more than truth. He leaned forward, whispering, you think the cameras will protect you. Public sympathy doesn't last. This town doesn't want martyrs. It wants order. Maya felt her chest tighten, like the walls themselves pressed in. Order for who? He didn't answer. That night, David found her curled on the couch, face buried in her knees. Talk to me, baby girl. Her words spilled out in jagged breaths. They hate me, even the ones who say they don't. They look at me like I broke something, like it's my fault. David knelt beside her. You didn't break anything. You revealed it. Her eyes brimmed. What if that's worth? What if it would have been easier if I stayed quiet? David's voice shook with restrained fury. Easier for who? For them? For Hughes? For the boys who laughed at the rope? He cupped her face, his calloused hand gentle. You don't carry their shame, Maya. They do. And I swear to you, they will answer for it. But even David couldn't stop what came next. 2 days later, his commanding officer called. Commander Carter, the media attention. It's becoming a distraction. The Navy doesn't want its name dragged into this. David stiffened. So I should sit down and shut up. The officer hesitated. I'm saying you should consider how your actions reflect on the service. David's voice was ice. The service taught me never to abandon my own. You think I'll abandon my daughter? Think again. He hung up, rage burning hotter than ever. Meanwhile, retaliation grew sharper at school. Maya's locker was vandalized. Red paint slashed across LIAR. When she opened it, shredded notebook pages spilled onto the floor. Her hands shook as she crouched to gather them. Around her, students whispered. None helped. A boy filmed on his phone, snickering. Smile. Rope girl. Worlds, still watching. Maya's throat closed. She shoved the papers into her bag and fled. That evening, she wrote again in her notebook, words trembling onto the page. Truth is fire. It burns lies, yes, but it burns me too. I am ash in their eyes now, scattered by their whispers, and still, the rope hangs in every hallway of my mind. She dropped the pen, tears blurring the ink dot. David entered quietly, reading the pain on her face. We can stop this, pull you out of school, take you somewhere new. Maya shook her head fiercely. No, if we leave, they win. The Noose wins. He stared at her, his daughter, trembling but unbroken. Pride swelled against his fear. Then we stand, together, until the rope is nothing but ash. But the fire spread further. At the next board meeting, protesters lined the street, signs waved, "Protect our kids, end the cover-up, justice for Maya," across the street. Counter-protesters shouted back, "Stop dividing us. No more lies." Blood police stood between them, tension crackling in the air. Inside, Hughes faced the board with a calm mask. "We've made mistakes, yes, but the media frenzy is harming the reputation of our district. We must think of stability." A board member leaned forward, voice sharp. "Stability doesn't come from cover, it comes from truth." Hughes's smile faltered. When David stepped outside the meeting, reporters swarmed. "Commander, do you believe Principal Hughes should be removed?" David's answer was measured steel. "I believe leadership either protects children or endangers them." Hughes chose the latter. The crowd roared, cameras flashing. That night, the town seemed split down the middle. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Friends turned cold. Even church pews whispered with division. Maya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her chest heavy. Her words from earlier echoed in her mind. "What if it would have been easier if I stayed quiet?" But then she remembered her father's voice. "You don't carry their shame." "They do, Jot," she whispered into the dark, her voice barely audible. "Then let them carry it. Let it burn them." Outside, the wind howled against the windows. The fire of truth had been lit, and the whole town was smoldering. But ashes weren't just remnants of fire. They were also the soil where something new could grow. And though Maya didn't know it yet, her ashes would soon become someone else's reckoning. The boardroom was packed, every seat taken, the air thick with heat and accusation. Parents lined the walls, reporters filled the back rows, cameras pointed like weapons. Principal Hughes sat stiff in his chair, tie pulled tight, sweat shining under the fluorescent lights. Beside him, the superintendent shuffled papers nervously, as if order could be restored by shuffling. The chairwoman of the board banged her gavel. "This meeting will come to order." But order was already gone. A parent stood, voice trembling with fury. "My daughter told me she saw the Noose in the hallway. She was scared to even tell me. And you made it vanish like it never happened." Hughes cleared his throat. "We investigated that claim thoroughly. There was no conclusive." David's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "No conclusive evidence. You had the rope. You had the footage. The only thing inconclusive is your integrity." The room erupted in shouts, some cheering, others yelling to silence him. The chairwoman slammed the gavel again. "Commander Carter, you will let the principal finish." David didn't sit. His eyes burned holes through Hughes. "Finish. He's been finished since the day he chose to bury the truth." A board member leaned forward, glaring at Hughes. "Why wasn't the footage included in the original disciplinary report?" Hughes shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. "It was an oversight. We didn't want to escalate tensions further." David barked a bitter laugh. "You mean you didn't want to expose yourselves? Call it what it is." Gasps rippled through the crowd. In the hallway outside, Maya sat with a few sympathetic students, her notebook open across her knees. She wasn't allowed in the boardroom. To protect her from stress, they said, but the muffled shouts told her everything she needed to know. One boy beside her leaned in. "They're fighting for you in there." Maya didn't look up. Her pen scratched furiously. "The wall is cracking." The cracks sound like shouting, like fathers breaking silence, like liars choking on their own rehearsed lines. Inside, another parent rose, her voice shaking. "This isn't about stability. This is about trust, and you've broken it. My son saw what happened in that cafeteria, but he was too afraid to speak up, because you showed him speaking up gets punished." Applause broke out across the room. The superintendent raised a hand, pleading, "Please, everyone, let's not lose control." A father shouted back, "Control is what got us here. You cared more about control than about our kids." Hughes stood abruptly, slamming his palms on the table. His mask slipped, voice sharp and bitter. "Do you people have any idea what it's like to run a school? You think discipline is easy. You think balancing fairness and stability is simple. You all sit here demanding blood, but none of you know what it takes." David rose slowly, towering over him with a calm, dangerous steadiness. "What it takes is courage. What it takes is honesty. What it takes is the kind of leadership you've never had." The room roared. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras zoomed closer. Hughes's face paled. For the first time, the wall behind him looked paper-thin. Later that evening, outside the school, protesters lined both sides of the street again. This time, though, the balance had shifted. On one side, justice for Maya, truth matters, end the cover-up. On the other, a smaller group now, their chants drowned out by the louder, angrier cries for accountability. Maya and David stood at the edge, watching. Maya whispered, "It feels different now." David nodded, "Because the wall is collapsing. They can't hold it up anymore." She glanced at him. "But what if it falls on us?" He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Then we dig out." Together that night, the news was merciless. Headlines blared, principal under fire for cover-up, bored faces fury. Noose scandal divides town. Clips replayed David's words, his voice echoing across networks. "The only thing inconclusive is your integrity." Commentators debated, some called him a hero, others said he was inflaming division, but none could deny the impact. Hughes, once untouchable, was now a man cornered. In his office, Hughes sat in the dark, only the glow of his desk lamp lighting his face. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls unanswered, emails piling up. Finally, he answered one. The superintendent's voice was cold, clipped. "You've become a liability." Hughes swallowed hard. "I was protecting the school." The reply was ice. "You were protecting yourself, and now you're alone." The line went dead. For the first time, Hughes felt the wall at his back crumble, and there was no one left standing beside him. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, Maya closed her notebook and stared out the window at the flickering protest signs below. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The wall fell because we pushed, but walls don't fall quietly. They break loud, they bury what's beneath." David stood in the doorway, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You did this. You forced them to face what they buried." She turned, tears shining in her eyes. "So why does it still hurt?" He stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. "Because truth doesn't heal overnight, but it does heal, and soon they'll choke on their own silence." The cracks had become collapse. The blue wall, that fortress of silence, denial, and stability, was rubble now. And from the rubble, only two things remained clear: Maya's pain and Hughes's downfall. The boardroom was silent as the chairwoman cleared her throat. Reporters leaned forward, cameras blinking red. Parents filled the back rows, the air thick with anticipation. After review of evidence, testimony, and the mishandling of reports, the chairwoman announced, "This board finds Principal Hughes in violation of district policy and ethical standards, effective immediately. He is removed from his position." Gasps rippled across the room. Hughes sat frozen, his face drained of color. His mouth opened, then shut again. No one spoke for him. The wall was gone. Outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers mixed with angry shouts. Some wept, others pumped fists into the air. Maya stood among them, her father at her side. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from release. She whispered, almost to herself, "He's gone." David's voice rumbled beside her. "Chains don't just fall, they're broken. You broke them." But the reckoning wasn't done. The three boys who hung the noose were named in the board's findings. Their suspensions became criminal charges. Harassment, intimidation, hate crimes were forwarded to prosecutors. Reporters swarmed their parents' homes. One smug smiles vanished into locked doors and curt denials. One clip went viral, a boy's father shouting at cameras, "They're just kids." It was a joke. The internet's reply was merciless. "A noose is never a joke." At school, whispers changed tone. Students who once sneered now avoided Maya's gaze. Others approached cautiously. A boy from her English class stopped her by the lockers. "Maya, I never said anything before, but I want you to know, I'm proud of you." She studied his face, searching for mockery, but found none. She nodded once. "Kurt, don't be proud of me. Be loud next time." He flushed, but nodded, understanding. That evening, father and daughter sat together at the kitchen table. For the first time in weeks, there was quiet. No cameras outside, no protest chants in the distance, just quiet. Maya pushed her notebook toward David, read it. He scanned the page. Her handwriting was fierce. Lines underlined, words etched deep. "The rope was meant to scare me. It failed. The silence was meant to bury me. It failed. The punishment was meant to chain me. It failed. I am still here, breathing, writing, speaking, living, and that means I won." David's eyes glistened. He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You didn't just win, Maya, you changed everything, but change left scars. Weeks later, news coverage slowed. The internet moved on. Yet Maya still carried whispers in hallways, side-eyes in the cafeteria, the memory of shredded notebooks. One night, she asked her father quietly, "Does it ever really end?" David paused, then answered with raw honesty, double quotes, "No, not all the way. Some chains rattle forever, but you learn to walk without them weighing you down." She nodded slowly, taking in the truth. The story reached further than their town. Civil rights groups picked it up. Journalists wrote essays on systemic silence in schools. Lawmakers cited Maya's case in debates about equity and discipline. David never sought fame. He only wanted justice for his daughter. But Maya, she became something else, a voice. One evening, she was invited to speak at a youth forum. Standing at the podium, microphone trembling in her hands, she scanned the crowd of students. Her voice wavered at first, then steadied. "I was told to be quiet. I was punished for speaking. But silence protects cruelty. Silence builds walls. And silence leaves ropes hanging in hallways." Her eyes burned, her voice clear. "If you see a noose, if you hear a slur, if you watch someone be cornered, speak loud, even if they tell you it's disruptive. Because disruption is how chains break." The audience rose in applause, some with tears streaming down their faces. Afterward, David hugged her tightly. "That's my girl." Maya smiled through damp lashes. "Your girl, but also my own." Later, alone in her room, Maya wrote one last entry in her notebook. "They tried to make me a victim. My father made me a fighter. But in the end, I made myself a survivor. The rope is gone now, but the memory isn't. And maybe that's the point. Chains don't break quietly. They snap, loud, so everyone hears it, so no one can deny it ever existed." She closed the notebook gently. For the first time, she felt lighter. The rope had hung as a symbol of fear. But, in the end, it became something else. The very proof of injustice. The trigger for exposure. The chain that broke when a father and daughter refused to be silent. And in its ashes, Maya stood unchained.